We're going to get started. My name is Keith Cernick. For those of you who have not been here before, I work with CEA Fresh Farms. I'm one of their attorneys. I want to thank everyone for coming out this morning on Saturday. We know that it's early, but we felt it was important to schedule a meeting on Saturday to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to come in and see what we're presenting. Schedule-wise, today's meeting is going to end approximately 10:15, so we've got about an hour and 15 minutes. What I request from everyone is that you hold your questions and comments to the end. I have a microphone that I walk around the audience, have everyone speak into the microphone so everyone in the auditorium can hear. We found from our past meetings here that people in the back can't hear the people in the front and vice versa. So please wait for the microphone when the question comes time for questions or comments. We're going to do a brief introduction. We're going to have Kevin Feit, who's the CEO of CEA Fresh Farms, speak. We're going to show a brief video, and then we're going to open it up for questions and comments from the audience. Mark Balfour, I'll introduce the panel. This is Kevin Feit. He's the CEO of CEA Fresh Farms. The gentleman who's walking around with his jacket on over there is Mark Balfour. He's head of food service for the Webster Central School District. He'll do a brief presentation on the aquaponics program that's currently in use at the school district. The gentleman who's fiddling with the boards over there is Peter Vars. He's our chief engineer for the project. As Bill Bigger is sitting over here in the green jacket. Bill Bigger is an executive with CEA Fresh Farms, and he's head of sales for CEA Fresh Farms. Mark, you're going to speak first. So you want to come up and speak? And then we'll introduce Kevin, and then we'll get started. Yep.
Good morning, everybody. As he said, I'm Mark Balfour. I'm the Director of Food Service for Webster Schools. And if you saw me speak on Wednesday and Thursday, very bad cold, so hopefully today will be a little bit better. And I am feeling much better, so hopefully I can bring this to you in a much more uplifting fashion. But I do apologize if you're hearing it for the third time. But I will be brief. So anyway, I just want to point out that, yes, I'm the Director of Food Service for Webster Schools, and I was asked to speak today about our experience with a greenhouse in Webster Schools. I'm not paid by the company. I'm not invested in this project in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's kind of important to say that. So I'm just going to talk about what our experience is. So how we came up with a greenhouse idea for Webster Schools is I've worked in a lot of school districts around the country, Chicago, Washington, D.C. I was the director at Rochester City for several years. And it just kind of seemed that people really don't understand where their food comes from. I grew up in a community much like Webster, surrounded by farms, but I wasn't a farmer. I didn't know any farmers, and I sure as heck wasn't a fish farmer. Our system's a little bit different. Aquaponics and hydroponics are different. Theirs is going to be hydroponics, which is using water to grow plants indoors, but they will add the nutrients that the plants need. I don't add any nutrients or chemicals or anything at all for the plants because the fish generate the waste. Bacteria in the water turn that waste into nutrients and food for the plants. So it's a little bit different. We felt it was important to do aquaponics instead of hydroponics in our system because we wanted students to be able to see a fully functioning ecosystem. Not just read about it in the book, but see the entire process from start to finish, from seed to plate, if you will. So regulations have taken a toll on food service, and we don't think that people really appreciate where their food comes from or what it takes to put fresh food on their tables. I'm not going to read every bullet point because I do need to be a little brief this morning, but we just didn't think people appreciated what it takes to put all the food on their plate that we do for $2.85. Some of the things that accelerated our thought process is food safety. If you remember back around Thanksgiving last year, we had the romaine recall, and I was a person who was in Michigan where I grew up, and I was eating some turkey and some good food, and my phone started blowing up with text messages and emails about this recall. Personally, I just kind of laughed, because I knew that I was going to be delivering lettuce on Monday to all of my students. So we don't have those problems with our greenhouse. We also coined a phrase called the California effect. Every time there's a drought, too much rain, an earthquake, a flood, anything, it affects our quality and cost of lettuce. So by having this greenhouse, we're able to really put local food on steroids, because we're not just offering potatoes and things that you can grow in New York during growing season. We're able to offer food to our students that's high quality, no hormones, no pesticides, nothing. There's nothing that goes into that greenhouse any stronger than Dawn dish soap and maybe white vinegar. It helps our food cost. We anticipate a 5-year payoff, so within 5 years we will be getting all of our lettuce for free. And again, really high quality. We're not serving head lettuce to the kids anymore. We serve a high quality romaine, and it also gives us the ability to adapt. So I can play with a lot of varieties of lettuce. I can play with color. I can get some red lettuces in there. We can do a lot of different things. We grow celery, tomatoes, cucumbers as well. One of our #1 sellers is our pre-made salads, which is something the kids can choose as an entree instead of a hot dog or a chicken sandwich or any of those types of things. Now they can get a salad entree. They can still take all the other sides with their lunch. And we found that it's been a huge hit. Next slide, please. Oh, you already did it. So our greenhouse is 3,600 square feet total. The greenhouse itself is 3,000 square feet. We partner with Morrisville College, just down the road from us. We also partner with Harris Seeds. They've donated lots of varieties of seeds to us just to experiment with. Nelson and Pate is the company that we bought our greenhouse from. We're not experts on it, so we bought a greenhouse that arrived to us on a flatbed truck. We bought all the internals that also came on a flatbed truck. Our buildings and trades guys for Webster Schools assembled all of it. So CEA had expressed an interest in partnering with us, and we do see some possibilities down the road where students can come into the greenhouse, learn about it, and if we have places for them to transition into jobs, we see that as a possibly good thing. From the educational aspect, if we could go to the next slide, what we do is we will have elementary students, middle school, and high school students, and we come to the greenhouse and we tailor the visit to those students. So with every visit, I go and visit classrooms first. It accomplishes a couple things. One, I can give a good presentation about greenhouses and the whole aquaponic process, the nitrification that goes on, the bacteria, all those things. And I also show students how you can do this at home yourself for not much money. You don't need tilapia like I use. You can use 10-cent goldfish, and frankly, just use the water. We bring the middle school students there. A lot of the tech students have been coming to our class. Again, same thing, we do a presentation, we're able to show them the difference. And the really fun thing for me with the students when we do these presentations is being able to take food that we've grown in the greenhouse, especially tomatoes and cucumbers and broccoli and things like that, and I put them side by side with the products that we would have bought in the grocery store. And I explain to them after they've eaten it and they tell me which one they like better, I'm able to show them and explain to them why this one tastes better. And anyone who's a farmer gets it. A lot of people don't get it. I don't think I got it, frankly, until I started doing this. And it's just real simple. Once you pick that tomato, the flavor profile is not going to change. It may go from green to red, it's going to do that anyway. But the flavor is not going to change once it's picked. So when it's picked in California and now it takes a week to get here and to somebody's table, the flavor profile hasn't changed. They can taste the sweetness and the difference when those products are side by side. And it gives them a different appreciation. So what we have noticed is our salad sales, which I think is a good thing, has been increasing dramatically, and kids now stop me in the hallway to talk about this, which I think is a good thing as well. Our environmental club, they work in the greenhouse. We then sell the fish, and we give them the proceeds for selling the fish. It helps fund their club, and it keeps a steady stream of people coming into the greenhouse and helping work. The chemistry classes come to the greenhouse, they will weigh the fish, they weigh the food, they transfer the lettuce, they do every single step in the process. And what we've added this past year is I now also have them harvest the fish, so they learn that process. I teach them to fillet the fish, and I let them do it. and then I also cook the fish for them. So now they go completely with the whole circle of the system. They get the produce and they get the fish, they get the whole thing, and when I do cook for them, I use the produce in whatever I'm cooking for them. So if a lot of times I'll make fish tacos for them, so I can use the lettuce and the tomatoes from the greenhouse with the fish tacos, and the fish is also coming from the greenhouse. So for us, it's a very positive thing. Yeah, I think it could be a positive thing for the community, but ultimately you have to decide. Excuse me. Still a little bit of the remnant of the cold. But ultimately you have to decide for yourselves, but for us it's been a very positive experience, and I think it's been a pretty positive experience for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Ma'am, we're gonna hold questions if we can, please, and comments to the end. For those who walked in a little late, we are planning on stopping about 10:15 today. We'd asked that all questions, comments be held till after Mr. Feit does his presentation. And we promise you there'll be plenty of time for questions, comments, and we also ask that you wait till the microphone comes to you, because we found in our previous sessions that people in various parts of the audience had trouble hearing. Before we play the brief video and Kevin's going to speak, I just want to introduce a little about CEA Fresh Farms. Kevin and his team of managers have spent a number of years going across the world finding best-in-class technology. They found two partners in Holland, one that's going to build the actual structure and one that's going to build the grow system. And the company that's building the structure was recently awarded last week, or earlier this week, from the King and Queen, the #1 greenhouse builder in Holland, or in the Netherlands, I should say. To us, we don't really understand what that means, but that's like getting the J.D. Power Award for every top category that you have for a car. It's a great award, it's a very prestigious award. That's the company that they're using to build the structure. Mr. Feit's a seasoned executive, has taken companies public, private. He's had a very successful 35-year career in finance and in business, very successful companies across all different spectrums. Bill Bigger, who I introduced earlier, has spent his entire career in the food industry working for Stouffer's, for Nestle's, and for other food companies. Kevin has another executive who spent time in the lettuce industry with doing marketing and packaging for the largest companies in the country, Ready Pack, Fresh Express, Dole, Weight Watchers. He has a material scientist who's a world-renowned material scientist on his team. One of his co-founders is a grower in Ohio. He has a wealth of experience on his team of people who bring to this industry and bring to this project more than any other company that's in this space right now. They're not just a bunch of finance guys who don't know what to do when it comes to growing. He grew up on a farm. 2 or 3 of his other team members who grew up on a farm. They understand farming very, very well, and they understand this industry. Justin, you want to run the film? Now, one last announcement before Kevin comes up to speak. I'm just going to reiterate it one more time. Please wait for the microphone. Hold your comments and your questions till he is done. And I just ask that everyone be respectful of everyone else's opinion. We had a slight issue the other night with a variance in opinions, but I would just hope that everyone would be respectful, that some people may have a different opinion than what you hold, and kind of hold your comments when it comes to that to yourselves. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you, yes, it's working. It's kind of interesting. I'd like to ask a couple of questions first. Who is seeing this presentation for the first time, if you could raise your hands? Okay, good, welcome, welcome. I see some familiar faces and folks that have been back here on Wednesday night or Thursday night. Second question, how many folks are here in the audience that are either farming today or actually came from a farm? Okay, thank you very much. Well, we have, certainly those that just raised their hands, we have something really in common. I grew up on a dairy farm in Indiana. I actually started riding a tractor when I was 7 years old. And my grandfather, I was riding it. If anybody remembers the old Ford 8Ns, my grandfather had to actually put two-by-fours on the pedals so I could actually reach it. He'd put me out in the field all day to hoe beans or to hoe corn, early on there. Obviously, I've been very fortunate coming from Indiana, growing up on a dairy farm. Some of my family still farms today. They're farming a lot differently today, more so than what I did probably, I guess now maybe 50 years ago or so. But it's still somewhat the same. Obviously, more automation, more equipment, if you will, that's more efficient in the fields and everything. And it's this time of the year right now, if we were in the farm, we remember driving the combines and coming down and picking the corn and watching that corn come up, obviously, through the corn head there. So I basically had a great career growing up on a farm, college, United States Navy, and then actually getting in another couple of other businesses before it brought me to what we're going to talk about here this morning and everything. But what's interesting is when I started to take a look about 3 or 4 years ago in terms of CEA Fresh Farms, CEA stands for Controlled Environment Agriculture. So it's an opportunity basically to grow indoors, but to control the environment and to remove most of the variables and most of the risk associated with growing. Because I think most of you are aware, certainly those that eat leafy greens, and obviously we all do. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've had significant problems in our supply chain. We've had problems with contamination, we've had problems with weather, a number of different factors that have affected our supply chain in terms of our produce. And also, one of the things that we can do by growing indoors and by growing locally or positioning here in the eastern part of the United States is we can remove most of those variables. And also, it's an interesting industry. It's emerging here in the United States. There's less than 1,000 acres right now, basically, of different indoor type of growing. There's about 6,000 acres in Canada and 12,000 acres just in Holland alone, let alone when you go to Spain and it's several, probably 40 to 50,000 acres basically of indoors. Most everybody grows their food indoors. Right now, 98% of our food comes from the West Coast. So God forbid, but if something happened to the West Coast, be it bioterrorism, be it an earthquake, a number of other, if you will, types of events, that could shut our supply chain off, which is only 28 days long. So part of what I'm here to talk about, obviously, today is a little bit on the industry and why I believe, basically at Cornell, a number of other universities, a number of other communities around the United States are looking very, very carefully now, basically, at indoor growing and being able to provide more food security and food self-sufficiency, basically, to the local market, local and or regional market. So, next thing I'd like to talk about is, you probably all, asking why Webster? Why here? Why on State Road? And everything like that. And we've talked about that quite a bit in the last couple of meetings. We looked at over 100 different locations and sites throughout upstate New York, starting all the way over from Albany, going to Syracuse, and all the way to, if you will, to Buffalo. But at the end of the day, basically, we decided that talking to the folks in Monroe County, talking to the local leadership here, along obviously with the leadership here in Webster, that this was a great community to actually locate our farms. There's a lot of things that we have to have. We have to have infrastructure. We have to have basically access to highways. We have to have access basically to a workforce. And one of the things that you saw up on the video is in terms of the economic development and the type of jobs, the job creation. These are going to be sustainable jobs. These are not foreigners that are going to come in and pick the crop, probably similar to what you've probably heard a little bit about with some of the vine crop growers that bring in H2A workforce to pick. These are going to be full-time, year-round, sustainable jobs, basically, for the community here. And up to 365 to 400 jobs over the next 4 or 5 years. So it's significant. They're full-time, basically. They're going to have benefits. At the end of the day, everybody that works there can take home as much leafy greens as they want to take home every day to their families. And at the same time, there's going to be a lot of skilled jobs, people who obviously are responsible for working on the facilities, both in the structure as well as the grow system and all. So there's a lot of opportunities here for jobs, number one. Mark talked earlier about the education, the training that the school's doing here. Of those 100 locations, along with a number of locations that I've been to in the United States and around the world, have not found very often a community that's been as progressive as yours, that has a school that actually has a greenhouse and actually a program on the schools, okay, teaching the kids. And I think you heard Mark, and Mark talked quite a bit about that, about the level of excitement, okay, basically they have. And why? Because this is part of the future of farming. It's different. I grew up on a farm. I have family right now farming. They're out in the fields trying to get the crops off, if you will, and juggling around. They were trying to get them in earlier and trying to get them out on time to make sure, basically, that they can get the highest yield possible. But as you know, those that are in farming today, it's been a challenge, and it's continually being a challenge. It's even more so in California with the water issues, with the labor issues, with the weather changes. So there's a lot of factors. Coming back to Webster, New York, after basically spending some time here and doing some due diligence, if you will, around different site locations, and we did look, obviously, at different sites in Monroe County, and we also looked at different sites right here in Webster, including the Xerox plant. And we had some questions the other night. We spent some time trying to get a hold of those people and everything like that with no avail. And all. Not only that, but the Xerox property in itself is over 600 acres. The company has not decided what they're going to do with the property. And not only that, basically, there's a lot of work that would have to be done, probably years of work that would have to be done to actually prepare that property to convert it from what it's doing today to what you've seen and what we're doing, basically, with CEA on that. So I think with that, what I'd like to do probably is open up, if you will, to any questions. And everything in terms of the audience. Again, I appreciate all of you coming out. This is our third meeting that we've had here this week. We asked to do this. This is not something that we had to do but we really enjoyed getting the feedback that we've received. We know it's going to impact some people, particularly those that we've heard from that live in the surrounding area there. But like anything else, there is change, and none of us like change and all. I sometimes don't care for change, but you know what? I'm 60, and what I did 4 years ago when I identified this industry and an opportunity, coming from a farm background, having basically family members that are in farming thousands of acres, talking with them about it as well, they said, this is the future. This is something that you need to do, Kevin, and I'm going to do it.
I was going to ask where the greenhouse was located.
Oh,
No, the one.
at the school. So at the school. Mark, I'm not sure which school. Yeah. Yes.
On a pre-existing.
Hold on. Oh, on a pre-existing.
Yeah, it was, I'm a school teacher in Webster. I'm also a resident of this community. I'm a school teacher in Webster, and I'm also a resident of this area. It was a nice little presentation that Mark gave us about the Schrader greenhouse, but I don't understand its relevance to this at all. Because I don't think anybody here is denying that, produce greenhouses are important things, just not in a residential area. The greenhouse for Schrader was built on an area that was already pre-existing concrete. It was already a parking lot. This has nothing to do with putting greenhouses in habitat. We're taking away habitat. We're taking away green space. And honestly, I would like you to share with us what the jobs are, because it looked like everything to me was run by machines. So I want to know what jobs, besides trucking, because I already know I'm going to be listening to semis going past my house daily and nightly.
Yes, I can actually walk you through the jobs. First of all, there is a strong tie into the school and what Mark and what the students are doing over at the school today, along with the students down in Geneva, at the Cornell campus, over at Cornell, at Ohio State, University of Arizona, Michigan State, RIT. All of these schools are starting programs reference to education. So it's wonderful to be able to start the kids in elementary, junior high, or high school, particularly those that have an interest in agriculture and the future of agriculture and farming, to be exposed to something like Mark is exposing them to. They're very excited about it on that. So that there is links, because one of the biggest weaknesses that I found, not only in the United States but worldwide, is there's a lot of education, a lot of training that's needed basically to actually operate one of these facilities, which then leads me to the second part of your question, and that is, where are the jobs? Well, first of all, I run public and private. I would not be putting these jobs up here. I wouldn't be sharing them with the Economic Development Office, both in Monroe County or here in Webster with your leadership or anybody else, unless those were the jobs. So the jobs that you see are absolutely full-time, basically salaried and or hourly type jobs, full benefits, basically year-round. So I could go through the specifics with you. They start with maybe a harvester, or someone that's in the processing, packaging, as the lettuce or as the product comes off of the line. It starts right there. There's a number of different jobs that occur there at that level. The second level basically is under quality control, food safety, oversight, if you will, basically of our food safety programs and protocols that are going on inside the greenhouse 24/7. Keeping in mind, we're turning that crop, unlike what we do here right now in terms of regular agriculture, we're turning that crop 10 to 11 to 12 times a year. So we're seeding and we're harvesting every single day. Along with that, there's areas basically for growers and technicians to work in the seeding and the propagation area. Also to take the readings, if you will, of our highly actually, basically nutrient solution that is actually going to the plants. And then we go into actually the plant itself, outdoors, the structure, as Keith talked about. There's really two major components, the structure and the grow system. Both of those basically are no different than some of the equipment that we currently use today, okay, basically to farm on the land. Not any different at all. It requires a level of technician in terms of heating and cooling, water management, the automation, the mechanisms, if you will. All of that equipment has to be maintained in order to do those grow cycles 10 or 12 times a year. We have to have people that are actually maintaining all of that equipment. The last thing obviously is someone's got to sell it. Someone's ultimately have to package it, inventory it, if you will, shipping and receiving, and basically out the door it goes. So there is a number of different jobs. Each one of those 5-acre farms, we estimate to be around 40 to 45 employees and or managers or supervisors that will run each one of those farms. As we expand and we take on and we grow over a period of 5 years up to the 7 farms, obviously there will be some efficiencies, but at the same time, as we start to build farm number 3 or farm number 4, we're going to have an opportunity. We're going to have an opportunity not to only grow lettuces and herbs or baby greens, but we're going to have an opportunity to actually build salads right here in Webster, New York. Building salads that can actually go as far away as New York, Washington, Boston. In 12 to 36 hours, okay, those customers will get a fresh salad that was grown and produced right here in Webster, New York.
Kevin, we got some comments and questions back here.
Yes.
No, back here. We'll go to you next, sir. Okay, thank you.
I noticed that some of the stuff was presented previously that wasn't presented tonight. What salaries are we talking about?
I just went through all the employees, all the way from
Right.
the harvesters to the growers and the managers.
So previously presented was, most of the salaries are about $38,000 a year?
No, that's an average.
Okay, an average. So an average salary of $38,000 a year. Is that today's number, or is that the number by the time you're fully operational?
That is today's number on the first farm.
Okay. So according to the census data from 2017, the median salary for Webster is actually $43,750. In that particular tract, census tract is $51,000. So this is actually lower than the median salary, right?
That I'm not
Yep.
sure of the data there, but yes, go ahead.
That's okay. Webster is actually behind Rochester and Monroe County as well. I don't know if you knew this, but Rochester and Monroe County median salary is currently $55,000. So we're behind, and this is going to pull us down even farther in terms of median salaries. And in terms of number of jobs, previously presented was a number between 300 and 400. Can you recall what that number was?
I think it's 364, 365 to be exact.
According to a study by Cornell, it was about 7 people per acre, which came out to about 245.
There's actually 7 acres. The 5 acres just a grow system. So if you take a look at a greenhouse operation, besides the actual growing platform, which is 5 acres, there's actually also additional space that's required for processing, packaging, seedlets, propagation, a number of different areas. It takes on another about 2.1 or 2.2 acres. So in total, it will be approximately a little over 7 acres per farm. And I think our total, we talked about this before, our total footprint on the Weber farm will make up about, I believe it's a little over about 40-45%. So there'll be plenty of green space, basically, with the facilities that we're building there. But we're going to be looking at about 50-55 acres.
Okay. So I think my point is that it sounds like your overall salary is going to be lower than the median salary for Webster, lower than the median salary for that tract, much lower than the median salary for Rochester and Monroe County, which is really going to drive Webster down towards the bottom end of Monroe County, even farther towards the bottom end of Monroe County where we are. So for the residents here that aren't, just looking here to learn, there was more that was presented the other night, and this will move Webster towards the bottom end of Monroe County. And I'm just afraid of Webster becoming the dump of Monroe County. That's all.
Yeah, good point.
All right, we're getting, hold on. We got an order here.
Let me address these salaries for a moment, or the compensation in these statistics that you just went through. No doubt you pulled all of that, obviously, from either Webster, Monroe County, or someone, but at the end of the day, what happens here, obviously, is that's pulling everybody, if you will, basically into that universe. So in that universe, you're including 10 to 20% of that universe that are professionals, that are probably making someplace in excess of $150,000 or $200,000. So it's going to skew those numbers, anybody that's a mathematician and understands where all that data comes from. So if you were to exclude that, and I would ask you to go back and check those numbers, if you exclude that, you would find basically that the numbers that we're outlining in reference to the average are aligned, if actually a little bit higher.
Actually, you would also have to disclude the lower income with the McDonald's.
You would have to do the McDonald's, yes.
Once you do that, it ends up there being roughly washed. I've done the numbers.
Sir, your question?
Yeah, I was wondering what exactly the point was comparing this to the greenhouse that Webster Schools is running, because we're talking about a 3,600 square foot greenhouse, which is roughly the size of a large house. This, we're talking about 146 acres, works out to be 6.5 million square feet. So if you're talking about using half of that space for greenhouses, you're talking about a little more than 10 times the size of the one in Webster. Or well, for the school district anyway. So scale-wise, they don't even match up at all. And the other thing we're talking about here is the fact that we're talking about all these educational outreach opportunities and wonderful things for the kids to learn about. You're not going to get any of that with this. So they really have nothing to do with each other. Greenhouses can be good when they're run properly, and it sounds like you probably do. The thing is, though, is that the example doesn't really hold. It doesn't mean anything.
You have to start somewhere. As I shared with you earlier, I grew up on a farm. And before I got on that tractor when I was 7 or 8 years old, I was working in the garden pulling weeds. So you've got to start somewhere doing something. And what Webster and what that greenhouse does do is it does lay the foundation for opportunities, if you will, basically to grow, to learn about, obviously, greenhouse operations, growing indoors, and a number of things. I would totally agree with you that their greenhouse compared to what we're building here is totally different. I'm not trying to compare shapes and sizes. But what I am trying to say is that we need the education, we need the training, and there are great career opportunities for these students today, basically, to enter into this field of controlled environment agriculture.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. I have several questions. One is, how much water will this use and where will it come from?
I can answer them one at a time, probably better.
Sure.
The first one is actually the facilities that we're building. As Keith talked about earlier, the company that we partner with in Holland, they're building the most sustainable, if you will, basically greenhouses in the world. These facilities will actually capture all of the rainfall, basically, or snow melt, either one, and we will actually capture that, and it will actually then run into tanks. We will filter that water on a couple of different stages. And to the event that we don't need it, then it goes into a secondary, if you will, basically retention ponds that you saw on the siding, basically around the property. In terms of water, right now, it takes 23 gallons of water to grow a head of romaine in California, just to grow it. It takes another 12 to 14 gallons of water, to actually process it. So by the time you're done, and we're looking at someplace between 35 and 38 gallons of water per head of romaine that you buy at the store, or a red or green leafy head of lettuce. We use 1.5 gallons. We use 1.5 gallons. At the same time, when we're growing, there's no waste. The waste that's grown, basically from field grown in California right now, that's shipped across the United States, almost 40% of that water, if you did the math, about 35,000 gallons, about 40% of that water is wasted. It's thrown out and it's going to dumps, it's going to other places, it's creating environmental issues and problems with the food waste.
So you don't use anything from the aquifer, Lake Ontario?
Do not. I have redundancy. Any of you that have been in the military, there's a lot of redundancy that's built into these systems, and water is probably the most important thing that I need to grow. Obviously, without water, I'm out of business. So we will have redundancy built in, both in water and in energy.
Now, about the nutrients that is that solution prepared on site, or?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's actually prepared, all natural. We're going to be growing all natural, organic, no chemicals, no herbicides, no pesticides, if you will. All the facilities in the last 4 years that I visited all over the world, I actually come into these places, I can actually pull it right out of wherever it's growing and eat it. It not only tastes great, but obviously there's no chemicals, there's nothing involved, obviously, with that product.
Well, I can see you are talking about the future of farming, and other countries are doing quite a bit of this. However, the presentation showed farmland, but actually that's going to be what was there previously. Now it's going to be an industrialization of the farmland, a huge factory with a lot of traffic. And I think this is what people are concerned about. The amount of traffic, huge factories that used to be, 150 some acres or 140 acres? Why can't it go on the other side of the tracks? This was debated about with the tomatoes. They got turned down. Now it's lettuce. So why was it not good for tomatoes, but it's good for lettuce? Why can't, you go look at the size of that factory, it's a half a mile long. So why couldn't it go somewhere like that? That land is disused, it's not seen, it's on the other side of the tracks. Put it along 104, you still have the same access for transportation, maybe even better. So that's my comment about the location of this is what people are concerned about. It's not agriculture, it's industrialized agriculture, that's the difference. Thank you.
Two questions. One is really quick. Are the lights, the 375 employee cars, the trucks, the noise, 24/7?
We've done traffic studies. We'll be working Monday through Friday, and obviously shipping on Saturdays as well. So there will be traffic throughout the week, but it will not be 24/7.
What are your operating hours?
We've not established those operating hours yet. It really depends upon some of basically the customers and when they want to pick up the loads.
You should have.
About the tomato factory, why it wasn't good for this location, but now lettuce is okay? I didn't hear it.
No, I thought my partner was going to.
Yeah, well, it's a simple thing. The main issue with the tomato facility was that the property that they chose was covered by what's called a conservation easement. And they weren't allowed to disturb the soil because part of when the town purchased the property, they used the USDA grant money to purchase the property. So there could not be any disturbance of the land and the soil that was there. That was the main issue, frankly.
Isn't building factory-sized warehouses?
This is not a warehouse. This is an agricultural facility as defined by the, can I finish? I let you speak, let me speak, please. As defined by the New York State Agricultural Markets Law, this is a agricultural organizational agricultural facility, and it's covered by the Agricultural Markets Law.
I say
By
that's a fine difference, that's almost no.
No, sir, I'm an attorney, I follow the law. The law says that that's what it is, that's what it is.
That's a word different, word
Okay,
in your
sir.
interpretation of the building.
It's not an interpretation.
It's still a building, that's a facility.
Sir, you had your chance to speak. This nice lady is speaking now, and you can come back and speak after she's done.
You should be able to know are the lights on all night?
The lights have to run about 17 to 18 hours a day in terms of the micromoles that we need to deliver to the plants on that. So those lights will come down at part of the nighttime because all plants need to go dormant for several hours on that. So depending upon obviously the varieties that we're growing, but on average those lights will run, other than when Mother Nature's given us a lot of sun here, which she does, those lights will run some of the time in the evenings, but we do have shading. We have the highest level of technology right now to deal with or to address the lighting issues. The other thing about the lighting compared to vine crops, and I don't want to get too far down into the lettuce, but I think it's important to note that because there's a lot of people here again today and that were in the previous meetings, is our lighting solution is an LED, and actually our lighting solution comes down closer to the plants. And so in terms of the wave, if you will, the light waves and the photosynthesis that's delivered to the plants, basically is much closer than a broad-based wave of light that's done with vine crops.
Okay. My second and last question is, one of your slides, the word up there was scalable. So you do this one, and in 5 years you buy the farm next to it, and in 5 years after that you buy the farm next to it.
It is yes, you're correct. It is scalable.
That
is, no, it's my word, and absolutely, that's part of the words and part of our vocabulary within the company. So yes, what CEA Fresh Farms, this is the first of probably 3 or 4 locations in the United States east of the Mississippi that we plan on building. We've already identified actually 2 other locations. We're talking with the community, like we're talking with you right now, on that location. They're very excited about it. Yes, it's going to probably have some impact to some of the residents, reference to that, but they also feel after a few years, once it's built out, the construction's completed, and by the way, that's 150 construction jobs that will be going on every year for the next 5 years on this location. So in terms of scaling beyond that location, no, there's no land. There's a tank to the west, obviously, and there's a little bit of land to the east, and really not much in terms of the wetlands to the south. But there is other land, basically that might be available here. The land might be available in 3, 4, 5 years at Xerox, obviously. So there's opportunities. I hopefully, basically, that if it does come available at Xerox, that we'll be able to take whatever's left there of the jobs and turn that 600 acres back into something that provides several hundred or several tens of thousands of jobs the way it did several years ago.
Ma'am?
On the answer to the gentleman in the back about wages, when you put farm on anybody's paycheck or scale, they're always going to be lower. Because I worked in food service at Aramark, and we were considered farm, and we got low wages. So how many people are you going to need daily and pay $12, $14?
Actually, the minimum we'll be paying is $15 an hour, plus benefits, which will be a 401k, plus the benefits itself, and I've been spending time on that already. There will be a contribution by us, by the company, that actually will provide enough dollars for those benefits for that single employee, basically, to have he or she's benefits paid for.
Now, the remaining lettuce that isn't sold, where do you put it? What do you do with it?
With the product,
Yeah.
that's Bill, we
If there's
obviously...
any waste, we've already spoken with the regional food bank,
Yeah.
and we're providing to the regional food bank.
Yeah, we're gonna do some of that. We're gonna do some at the schools and other people and everything like that.
Okay,
But
because
yes.
the tomato farm just throws it on the ground.
Oh,
And-
no.
Oh, yeah, that's what they do.
Do they?
And their drainage, the town of Ontario is picking up the drainage. So you're guaranteeing the Webster people won't have to pay the drainage for your area around you?
First of all, and that's a good question, and we refer to it as discharge. And also, we will actually, we have very little discharge in terms of our nutrient solution. We recharge it, basically every day, 365 days a year. Every once in a while, though, we will have some discharge, but that discharge goes to a designated area that's part of our overall design, basically, that we'll capture that and we'll deal with that discharge. It'll dry out, and what's interesting is it can be diluted down and actually be used as a really high-grade organic fertilizer.
Okay, that was a good answer for that one. My next question, how long do you stay in an area? How you said you've had other plants, how long do you stay there?
We're gonna be, whether I'm here or not, the facilities that we're building in Webster here will be yours. They'll be yours. They're not moving. These are single-purpose use buildings to grow food. So no matter what happens, and they're going to be at the highest level of technology in the world. Okay, so at the end of the day, these facilities will become a part of the fabric and actually part of the business and hopefully part of the reputation, a very positive reputation for Webster, New York, not only in New York, but throughout the United States and the world.
Well, a lot of times businesses have left.
They have.
And left this stuff behind.
You're absolutely correct. I call them carpetbaggers.
Okay.
And, I've been around some of those business people. I've been in some of the boardrooms of some of those people, and they're not nice people. And they'll come in and tell folks like you in these kinds of meetings what they're going to do, and absolutely, at the end of the day, they do something totally different.
Next question is the last. How do you proceed if marijuana gets legalized in New York State? What, will you still be doing lettuce?
We will always do lettuce at this facility. I'm the CEO, I'm the founder, basically, and we will not be growing cannabis, okay, in this facility.
You can count on that.
You can count on it. You can take it to the bank. And I'm sitting here with other people that I think are representative of leadership, not only here in the town or the county or the state, and you can count on that.
I'm familiar with your company. I'm asking, how long have you been in business?
Right now, we're a development company, so we've been in business for about 4 or 5 years in terms of under our name CEA Fresh Farms and CEA Holdings, Inc.
Okay. Who owns this company? What country owns this country? The Netherlands?
No, the country, our company.
Your company?
Myself and several other co-founders, and obviously some of the family and friends investors to date. We have a major, one major institutional investor and a number of other local and or other investors here in the United States that are part owners of this business.
And how much money are you asking the government to throw in on this?
Right now, we have not, and that question came up the other night. Right now, we've asked for, we've looked at different incentives and benefits. At this point in time, we've received nothing.
Doesn't mean you're not going to receive.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what ultimately I'm going to receive. Well, but I can tell you, we've not built this business model based upon those incentives or those benefits. I built companies that stand alone, okay, that can make money on their own. But absolutely, if you were running a business or building a business, or many of you out there right now, basically, you would do the same thing if there's some benefits available, certainly to help do that. Most of those benefits are going to be directly, basically, used not only for basically the business, but used obviously for the employees, for training, for education, and for a number of different things actually that will improve upon the business.
Sir, just to further into that, when we filed our site plan application with the town, we signed what's known as a host community agreement, which means that we agree to pay taxes on the portion of the property that the town of Webster would be entitled to. So the town of Webster will be receiving taxes that are appropriately assessed by the assessor for this property.
Okay. As what? As a farm or as a factory?
Whatever the assessor assesses it at.
Oh, that's leaving your door wide open, isn't it?
Whatever, it's not my choice, it's what the assessor does, just like he does on your property.
Kevin, why do you have to go on this side of Ridge Road when all our industry is set up on the north side of Ridge Road? I mean, if you think about it, Webster is a bedroom community, okay? We're building multi-million-dollar houses here for people to live. I'm not in love with factories, okay? Xerox is a perfect example. I started working there in '62 when it was going to be the biggest and best thing in the world, just like Kodak, unfortunately. Nothing against your company, okay? I've been in business 50 years. Never borrowed a dime from anybody but a bank, okay? So I'm old school. I've seen many, many people borrow money from the government. Obama sent $8 million to this guy. They were gone a month later. Not criticizing, taken away. I like what you're doing, okay? I just don't like where you're doing, okay? I believe that north, I mean, you're still going to get the same water. You're still going to get the same electricity. You're still going to get the same infrastructure. Why didn't you look north of Ridge Road like the tomato factory ended up doing, if you don't mind my asking?
We did. As I said, we tried to reach out to the folks over at Xerox and look at the land there. I think that land will be available over the next 4 or 5 years, but it's going to take 4 or 5 years to address a number of different factors associated with that. But at the end of the day, we did look around all over. And as I mentioned, we looked from Albany all the way to Buffalo. And there are a lot of different things looking at. Now, the last thing I will mention to you, and I think most of you are already aware of this, is that the Xerox property and all the way down to State Road or to the county and County Line Road and Salt is in an area called the Opportunity Zone. And so this is basically an opportunity zone. This was a program that was set up by the federal government a couple of years ago to help stimulate areas and or parcels, not the town of Webster, but a parcel. And they identified Xerox, okay, basically as a parcel of land that needed stimulation. And I think we could all sit in here and understand that that's the case. And that land obviously runs all the way from Schreiber Road all the way down past State Road.
Okay.
So that's,
I mean, I compliment the way you're handling yourself. I compliment your whole concept. I just don't like where you're putting it, and I don't see a future for us there. That's all.
I got you guys back.
Thank you.
Here first, hold on.
She was before me.
Yeah, but there are people behind you.
Yes, I'd like to know, where is your headquarters right now?
in a hotel room.
Okay, so everything is just paper and pencil plus?
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, you're not.
No, we actually have offices in Ohio and offices in Georgia right now. We are going to establish New York,
Why haven't
Western
you
New York.
seen any of these on your presentation, all your other little headquarters and that? We haven't seen nothing about the company.
If you go online, you'll see something.
Well, that's not the time to see it. We should see it right now.
Again, you can go online, you can find it.
You don't know.
I went online.
But you're,
There is.
well, right now, what you're doing is, all you're doing is giving information that's been pushed by a pencil and a piece of paper.
We have 12 people right now basically working full time, and probably beyond that, we probably have another 25 or 30 professionals that have been engaged by our company, both in New York and in Georgia, and actually outside the United States that's working. There's a lot of money being spent right now in your county, right here, okay, that goes into the 6 figures amounts.
You mentioned you had a host agreement signed with the town. Does that include you're going to pay school taxes and county taxes as well?
As of right now, we have no pilot agreement with the county. We have no pilot agreement with the county.
Are you paying school taxes?
Right now, we're not paying anything because we don't own the property.
What is the host?
When you build this facility, will you be paying county and school taxes?
It's all dependent on whether or not we apply for and are accepted with a pilot agreement with the county.
What is your intention regarding a pilot agreement?
We intend on filing a pilot agreement with the county, but we have not been approved by any as of yet.
How much federal money is going into this? How much is our liberal governor in Albany promised you?
There's no federal money and there's no state money right now.
Right now. I find that kind of difficult to believe since you're this far down the road with this plan.
I can't change your opinion.
Hold on, we got all the way up here, she's went wild.
Yeah, he's a visionary. He's a visionary. He's a visionary.
You've said you've searched from Albany to Syracuse, all these facilities, all these areas. You come to choose one that is contaminated?
There is obviously some small cleanup that needs to be done. Our engineers have done some evaluations already. We have other basically engineering firms and different people that are currently working on the property on that. But as I mentioned, and I've mentioned in other settings in the last couple, 3 days, unlike other possibly people that have contaminated property and contaminants on their property, this property will be cleaned up, it will be encapsulated, it will be taken care of, and I will have a clean bill of health.
How much of our
Just to
tax
clarify that, please, none of the grow structures will grow on any of the 3 areas that have contaminants, which as of right now is film, contact solution, and acetone. There are no carcinogens, there are no hazardous waste, so just we'll clarify what it is on this property. And most of those things are contained in the southern part of the property where there are wetlands right now.
Okay, and that's why the whole water system that they built from Basket Road to wherever it had to go around
Well, that's not
Kubrick's
entirely.
property.
Well, we don't own Kubrick's property, and it couldn't go through the pond that was filled in by the Kubrick's family. So that's why it was around. There is still an easement that goes through, diagonally through the entire piece of property, that the Water Authority is going to move to accommodate the structure that's being built.
Okay, so my question is, how much of my tax money is going to go into cleaning up your property that you're going to buy, that now I have to look at every day and have noise pollution and light pollution? I moved out to this property because it was in the country, and there was no buildings. And it's a beautiful property. And now you're going to put all these buildings on it. You're going to take my assessment, put it in the toilet, and I'm going to have to stay here.
If you, first of all, we just finished up a conversation on tax on that. So right now, we don't have any request for or have any monies coming in, basically, to deal with it or address that part of the question.
So you're going to foot the bill to clean up the whole thing.
We're going to take a look in terms of what is available to us to help assist us on that, if it's available. And I think any other business owner or anybody else that would be looking at that, or even a resident, that's someone that obviously has a home that has contamination on it, ought to probably try to seek the same, if it's available.
Hi. I have a couple questions. Just so you know, this isn't my first rodeo, okay? This is my second. So I'm just for everybody else that's here. It's good to see you guys again. So, how many greenhouses do you currently own?
We don't have any large facilities of this size operating.
You don't? Okay, good. How many truckloads in harvest?
Right now, each day, there's about a truck and a half, okay, that's produced off of a 5-acre facility.
A truck and a half. So about 700, no, it's like 500 semi-trucks a year coming in and out of your...
I'm
good at math, that's probably about right.
It's not your first rodeo,
no.
So go ahead and do the math.
All right, so the retention ponds on either side of the property, how deep are they?
Peter, you want to talk
Peter,
about
yeah.
Yeah, Peter. come on up here and talk about this.
It's not his first rodeo, I just want to let you know.
Matt.
So the irrigation ponds, on average, are going to be excavated down about anywhere from 5 to 8 feet deep to hold the water for the irrigation process. The stormwater management facility that would be used to address the stormwater runoff from the pavement areas, that'll be a design of around 3 to 5 feet in depth.
Before you answer this question, can you address the question that was brought up about the trucks? Someone else mentioned traffic. Since you've worked on the traffic study, you need to address that.
So, as part of the application, we did a traffic assessment that utilized the employment numbers on a per farm basis and a full build-out basis. Through those numbers, we're able to estimate the amount of traffic per day for those employees and workers. In addition to that, we added in the truck traffic, which, as Kevin said, we used a number of 5 combined trips per farm per day. That combined trip means that counts in and out. That's 2 trips. A truck in, a truck out. It's 2 trips. So 5 trips per farm per day. So at full build out, that's 40 trips per day. All of that data was provided to the Monroe County Department of Transportation. The traffic pattern likely is State Road to Salt Road North to 104, because 104 allows you to go east or west, obviously. All of those highway networks, State Road, Salt Road, Ridge Road, County Line Road, all under the jurisdiction of the Monroe County Department of Transportation. That's why they got that information. That's why they reviewed that information. They looked at the information of the traffic generation compared to the current volumes on the roads. What is the amount of traffic on those roads on a daily basis. They found that basically the highway network has more than adequate capacity to receive this additional traffic without any need for any additional highway improvements.
Peter, lastly, just what are the numbers from the current numbers that are trips that we have from Monroe County, and what's the capacity?
So this data was provided to us by the county. The county does a program, I think about every 3 years, basically every county road has traffic counts taken on it. So the most recent data, which is 2017, State Road, this segment of State Road carries about 1,100 cars per day. And Salt Road from State Road North carries about 3,000 cars per day. From planning purposes, the county utilizes a number of 14,000 cars per day as being capacity. So the point being is, and that's where they're able to draw their conclusion that there's adequate capacity on the highway network.
Does that include school buses
Wait,
up and
I'm
down
sorry,
the roads?
I'm sorry, Stacy.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
It's my bad. I just got a couple more questions.
It does, I'll just answer that, like, it includes all traffic. So yes. Thank you, Peter.
So I noticed that there is a residence that looks like it's Pac-Man into your plan. And well, is that owned by you guys, or is that a private property that's now on all?
That's a private.
That's a private property on all 3 sides. Okay. What does construction look like? Like, what is the time frame? So with all of this, is that beautiful berm that you guys had up in the beginning, is that going to be there first, or does construction come in and that happens last?
It will be integrated overall to the construction. Correct, Peter? I mean, it'll be built. Yeah, it'll be built.
And then, so what percentage of the agricultural land, what percentage is going to be covered in concrete or covered in greenhouses? Like, what percentage is that going to be?
I'll let Peter.
So of the 140 acre site, the total greenhouse coverage is about 48 acres. So that's about a third of it, 35% of the site. In addition to that, the support structures, that's about another 6 acres. And then the pavement areas for parking, loading, access around the rear for emergency access, things like that, that's about 9 acres. So we're looking at a total coverage of about 63 acres of greenhouses, buildings, pavements, and roadways.
I think you forgot about
What
this lady here. This
what about
lady,
the,
this lady.
I mean, there has to be some kind of management building in there, like
That's part of this.
that's part of the.
It's integrated as part
It's
of the
integrated into the structure, so there'll be a management piece on site. Okay, so the last thing, you talked about change, and this is just a comment, like, you know, it's how I feel. You talked about, you know, change, and change happens. You know, change is season, change is weather, change is, you know, when you're talking about your house and your home, the Whipples that live across the street from you that are part of this community, they're gonna have to deal with all these trucks coming in and out. I know why they moved out there. Like, I personally know the families that you're gonna have impact on. And you talk about it so flippantly up here that it's, you know, it's change, it's what's gonna happen, it's what's good. Like, I hope you understand that it's more than that, just one or two sentences of that it's gonna negatively impact some residents. There are residents that moved to this place because they didn't want to be around stuff like that. And there are residents that move to places that do. And I understand, like, this is up for sale, it's there, but you have to understand we're also a community of Webster that there's some of us that are opposed to this, and that there's gonna be pushback, and it's not just gonna be small. The last time I was that house, Pac-Man, into the middle of your property. And what's wonderful about this community is that it's not just me sitting up here and saying, oh, my view, because that's what Brother Weeze is gonna talk about. That's what the radio stations are gonna talk about. That's what, you know, the people that are like, oh, this is gonna help the community. You're gonna get pushback. And what's really awesome about this community is that it's not gonna be people that are flippant. It's not gonna be people that are angry. It's gonna be a community that comes together, and it's gonna say, like, this is not something that we feel is right for this spot. This is not something that we feel is well thought out. You know, I mean, look, I work in a school. Sometimes parents don't call me back, but I definitely get a hold of them. I'm a school counselor. I mean, you're a CEO of a multi-million-dollar business. You mean to tell me you can't get a hold of a guy at Xerox? Like, that's really hard to believe.
About time.
Hi, thank you.
Finally.
Okay, so just linking to change, the main point that I really wanted to say with all this, because I spent a lot of time last night reading the zoning code, and what I think is happening here, why this is something which doesn't require a variance, why the tomato farm probably didn't require a variance, is because it's new technology. So it seems like what's happening as we go forward here is that it's being pushed through in a loophole in our zoning. Now, just because your ultimate product is lettuce, okay, and that allows it to be agricultural, doesn't mean that this project is in line with the spirit of the zoning. The zoning exists to manage change within the town. It exists so that agricultural uses, which as defined by our zoning code do include greenhouses, okay? Agricultural uses are allowed to exist alongside large lot rural residential, and in fact, all of the different residential areas in Webster have agricultural uses as a stipulated use. I would be very surprised if even a smaller version of this project on a lot of land in a higher, denser residential area would be seen as even remotely viable because it is so obviously industrial. You said this is new technology, that we have less than 1,000 acres of this in the United States. Therefore, what the term meant by greenhouse, okay, was like designating when the code was originally written, could not have possibly meant what's happening here. This is mechanized, it's huge, the scale dwarfs all of the surrounding property. It contravenes the intention of the large lot rural zoning, which was to preserve as much permeable land as possible in these areas. It contravenes one of the explicit stipulations of R3 zoning, which agricultural use land is tied to. And I just think that given how carefully zoning is managed in other areas of Webster, it would be, it's just so patently wrong. It is so obviously wrong what's being proposed here.
and I applaud your vision, I applaud your determination. You've clearly been given the green light on this, but as this gentleman said, it's not what the residents want, it's not what the town wants. It would irrevocably change the character, not only of that part of Webster, but of all of Webster. I live nowhere near this, by the way, and neither do these people sitting with me. It's just wrong, and it's morally wrong. And with Xerox, there was a gentleman here the previous night who point blank told you he could get you a contact and get you a meeting, and would you want that? And you said no. And I think we have to be honest, it's not because Xerox was so unforthcoming. It's because of what you said, how much work it would take. You're not prepared to invest that additional money, even though it is part of the opportunity zone as well, because you want to get this done now, you want to see your returns. And I think that being a truth, you can't then portray yourself as concerned about the residents in this community. So, yeah.
Amen.
Thank you for your comment.
In your opinion, why were you not successful in Ohio, Georgia, Clay, New York, or Cicero, New York? Especially Clay, New York and Cicero, New York, starting in 2015. I know this company was named something else at that time because the Syracuse newspaper told us. But we talked to the ex-county executive, Joni Mahoney, and she had something different. Were you told that based on New York State, the first greenhouse, industrial greenhouse to go up sets a precedent? All other New York State indoor grown greenhouses are in industrial land, including the one in the center of the Bronx.
If you're asking that's what the county executive said to us, that's an absolute falsehood.
Okay, so you in 2015 did not go into ex-county executive Joni's office and tell her that you were going to give her county 1,200 jobs for the cost of your plant, which would be $66.5 million. Because when Syracuse newspaper found out that it was in fact 259 jobs for $66.5 million, she went on television to say that that figure was wrong. That was a figure of just what was going to be employed in the first greenhouse after the first year of your 5-year plan.
We need to address that, because I was in those meetings. We met with the county executive. We said when there was a full build-out, that it was anticipated at the time, because we were working with another company by the name of Ready Pack Foods, that between the two companies, there would be that many jobs. And they had promised us a parcel of land that was then taken away from us by the deputy county executive, and I was in the meeting, Kevin wasn't in the meeting, Mr. Berger was in the meeting with me. They said clearly that they were taking the property away for a higher and better use. So the numbers that you're having there, you're mixing your metaphors and you're mixing your numbers, because we told them that it was, the 260 was the first phase, and then it would potentially grow to that number.
Okay, so you did everything legally. Let's talk about all the grant paperwork that was filled. The thing that shocked ex-county executive, Joan, was that the newspaper went down and found that the paperwork you filed to get your New York Water Authority grant showed 700 jobs for a $330 million plan. And they claim, and including the current county executive, that the industrial property was no longer being offered to you because they found out that you were in the federal zone trying to buy up little parcels of land to piece them together behind their back to put your plant outside the industrial zone after they filed grants with Mario Cuomo and got $550 million to help out that whole area.
First of all, let's just break this apart piece by piece. Number one, Mario Cuomo was not governor, it was Andrew Cuomo, that's number one. Number two, we were never given $550 million by the state. That was a grant to the entire regional council, had nothing to do with us. Number three, we were not parceling properties together after our application was pulled and the property was taken away. We went to Cicero to look at different parcels of property to try to bring together different pieces of property out there that would fit what we would need to have done on this property and for this project.
How come you're not there right now?
Because there were, number one, there were no parcels of property that were large enough that did not have wetlands and that was flat enough for the to utilize it. We came out here because we felt that there was a better marketplace for employees and there was appropriate land out in this area.
Okay, because grant paperwork doesn't lie. They don't want you to sign on to do a project, throw that away. That stays in the record that anybody can call them.
And if you read the record, I don't need your microphone. Oh, that way. If you read the record carefully, you will see that the offer from the state expired within a month after they were granted the application, a month after their property was pulled.
I have a quick question. I'm getting the impression that you're all about what's best for the environment. So was any conservation impact studies done on these parcels of land that are being put together?
What do you mean by conservation impact statements?
So, for example, I have just a 1,700 square foot house on 5 acres of land in this area, and we had to do conservation impact studies, which actually delayed the building of our house for almost a year. They had to look at the migration of the geese and different things like that. This is a big parcel of land. It's a habitat to a lot of different animals. Was any impact study done for this? Because this is a hell of a lot bigger than 1,700 square foot house.
Peter, would you like to answer that?
So the application that's been submitted to the town of Webster, to the planning board, actually does include an engineer's report that addresses traffic, drainage, soils, all of those areas. So that information has been prepared and has been provided.
I got a question back here.
I've got two questions. First of all, who invited you to Webster?
Who invited me?
Who invited you to Webster?
Actually, I did that.
Yeah, the guy sitting right behind you did.
Yeah.
Who's that?
You live in Webster?
Yeah.
You live in Webster?
I don't live in Webster.
No, but who invited your company to come and work in Webster?
We visited, as I said before, we visited many communities all over upstate New York on that, so.
Well, I'm just saying, you had to hear about State Road from someone. It doesn't just happen.
To hear about.
State Road, where you want to form your company.
We did a lot of due diligence all on our own. There is lots of information, okay, that's available to myself and to our very talented team of people, both obviously at CEA Fresh Farms, along with a number of other people that we've retained throughout upstate New York to identify properties, both from an engineering, from a land standpoint, obviously from an infrastructure standpoint. So there was nobody specifically, if you will, that invited us to Webster. But once we located Webster, we were very thrilled, very excited reference to the opportunity here, particularly given the fact that the impact that Xerox has had on the town of Webster over the last 20, 30 years.
Okay, one other question. I would like to address this to Mr. Chatfield, who is the Webster Economic Development. Did you have anything to do with this, to bring it over to Xerox at all? You're the one that's a realtor,
Sure. Let me
and you
address that.
also know about us trying to get Xerox, to put jobs over there,
Correct. When Keith and Kevin came to town, they were provided phone numbers for the 150 acres that's actually not owned by Xerox anymore. It's owned by Mr. Thomas at the corner of Salt and Schlegel. And they did their due diligence on that property. They were provided information on properties off of Tibor Road, which is between Basket and County Line. They were provided information for the Weber Farm. They were provided contact information for Xerox Corporation. And essentially, we're just the connector. So we provide contact information, and then they do their due diligence. And they selected the site based on their due diligence.
So they did have contact information for Xerox.
The due diligence, and obviously Xerox has no interest in part and parcel separating individual pieces of land at this time. We have been working with them as close as possible over the past several years. Their real estate team has changed 4 times in the past 6 years of who's been in control. And as of right now, they're completely silent when it comes to the sale of any of their land or any of their buildings.
We
That's
got
just the way it
2
is.
questions. We got 1 question back here, and I got 1 more after that, because we have to wrap this up.
Yes.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So, I believe you referred to the Department of Agriculture and Markets law that you're referring to earlier, is that correct? From 1971?
I believe that was the year.
Okay, yeah, so I did a little research on this, and I came here the other night with an open mind. I listened to you and your presentation. I was expecting to see why this was necessary, or competition in the area, or a business plan. I didn't hear that. And I asked you about your experience and where you've been and what have you established, and you said nothing, and that you're relying on your managers as your experience. So I did some research, and I just have a few questions. There's a couple of things that piqued my interest. One was the review of the Department of Agricultural and Markets, that law. And in it, on section 305A, it says, in determining whether the operation constitutes a farm operation, the department evaluates such factors as the acreage in production, capital investment, gross sales of livestock products, the type of enterprise, and the number of years of operation. And just so you know, that this law was created in 1971. This was a different world, and it was created in its intent to protect farmers from the town encroaching on their land. So I would encourage other people to look into that, and there's different parts in that, and one of it says that it doesn't matter what the town or the municipality says, so I think that's part of the law that you're referring to, that you guys are leaning on, and not the other parts that actually talk about the type of building, the type of operation, and I think that needs to be litigated. And if it was created in 1971, and there's every 8 years, there's things called a review. I'm not sure when the last review was done, but I don't think that what you're building in the future of farming, it's a wonderful idea what you're doing. I appreciate you for growing food for people, but this is not the intent of the law, I don't believe, and I think that part is going to need to be litigated and understood. And the second part of this that I found out, you mentioned the federal opportunity zone. And I looked into that too. And in 2017, there was a federal law that was passed for investors, to encourage investors to invest money in underdeveloped communities. It says opportunity zones are designed to spur economic development by providing tax benefits to investors. First, investors can defer tax on prior gains invested in a qualified opportunity fund until the earlier date on which the investment of a QOF, that's what it's referred to as the Qualified Opportunity Fund, is sold or exchanged, or by December 31st, 2026. If the QOF investment is held for longer than 5 years, there's a 10% exclusion of the deferred gain. If held more than 7 years, the 10% becomes 15%. Second, if the investor holds the investment in the opportunity fund for at least 10 years, the investor eligible for an increase in basis of the QOF investment equal to its fair market value on the date this QOF investment is sold or exchanged. So if you've got millions of dollars or you've got foreign investment, I mean, the return on that sounds pretty good. And I understand that you have foreign investment, and I'm really concerned that when they pass this federal law, that it's the reason why that we keep finding ourselves here in these meetings defending our land from this happening. And I don't think that it was properly, we're not an underdeveloped community. If you talk about corporate social responsibility, there's underdeveloped communities right here in western New York. I mean, there's parts of Rochester that would really benefit from that. There's parts of Buffalo, the Rust Belt, I also, do you have any comments about that, sir?
Thank you very much for your comments. I
Yeah,
appreciate
first of all, there's no foreign investors, so I don't know where you got that from. We never mentioned foreign investors. There were no foreign investors in this project. Our partners who are building the structures, who we are paying to have it done, are from the Netherlands. They're not investors in the project.
Okay, and then I did some research, and are you do you personally, have you ever been with the State Advisors LLC? Is that?
This is not about me, this is about CEA.
Okay, well, no, it is about you, because I asked him about his experience, and he referred to you guys as his management team. And when I found that, it says that, I did a Google search, and I'm trying to give you an opportunity to tell me it's a different Keith Cernick. And when I did my Google search, it says that you were engaged in reportable lobbying from January 1st, 2011 through December 31st, 2015, and was required to timely file certain statements of registration fees, and client agreements or authorizations pursuant to the Article 1A of the Legislative Law, the Lobbying Act.
Sir,
Yes.
this is about them. This is not about me.
Keith is,
Yeah, no, well, it is about you.
No, it's not. No, it's not, because you're talking about my business, not their business. You want to talk about my business, I'll talk to you about my business outside the setting. It's about him, not about me.
Well, my point is, if you were fined $186,000 because you're not operating your business correctly, and he is saying that you are the experience and this is the team he's putting together.
Sir, I'm sorry, but I have an entire management team. Keith is providing an advisory role here, reference to CEA Fresh Farms, but I have an entire management team, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about myself. Google me. Okay, Google a number of other people that are on my team right now. What you're going to find out that all of them,
their names, and I certainly will.
all of them, no, I'm not going to provide it in an open audience, but I will provide it to you.
Okay, sir, can you, sir, we said we would stop at 11:15, it's 11:30. The young lady behind you has a question.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the last question for the day.
Thank you. So I don't live in Webster. I don't live in Monroe County. I live in Ontario County. I live in an area that has dealt a lot with the fracking issue. And I have a concern because I'm looking to move potentially to this area to be closer to my family. I look at this town of Webster as a family-oriented place, but I also see that there's no planning by either the town or whoever's in that development. It's important for a plan to be in place. I don't see that here. So other people like myself, you're going to lose families coming into this area. Isn't that important to your town? I would think so. The other point I want to make is when you start talking about retention ponds and contamination, water runoff, all of that, and yet you have had no environmental study done. Am I wrong? Has that been done?
No, we have had studies done. Peter went through those studies a little bit ago.
Not environmental, I understand.
No, there was traffic, it was water.
That's not environmental. That's not environmental.
Can you define to me what you're referring to?
I can ask his attorney right here to do so.
It's right here. It says that the Department of Agricultural and Reviews requires an environmental impact study done.
That's right. How is that, I'm asking the question, how is that not relevant here?
That's an issue for the zoning board to decide whether or not a secret requirement is required. It's not for us to decide. It's a zoning issue.
Okay, where's the zone?
Ma'am, hold on, excuse me, hold on.
It's not a town meeting. The zoning board meeting is November 19th.
That's what I need to know. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
One last question. Are we ignoring that? One last question. Everybody just listen. One last question. Why don't you go where you're wanted? Why face the opposition of all the people going through this? Go where you're wanted. Why not? It's so simple.
Sir, let me-
Somebody had a part, wait a second.
I can answer that
Hey,
question. I can
please.
answer that question for you.
Please
I've been in
pass.
the community along with a number of other people, and I can tell you right now, I have visited with hundreds of people inside this community, in Monroe County. They want us here. They really are encouraging us.
Nobody wants you here.